From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. You know what we need to do in this country? We need to build a new coalition. I've got an idea here that I want to run by you guys and see what you think. Now, of course you know I'm a lefty. I'm a far lefty. I want to go full-blown socialist. I want to abolish money, I want to abolish capitalism, I want to abolish profit. I want to go full worker community-owned resources in all aspects of culture and the economy. I'm a full-blown lefty, capital L. But also, along with being a capital L lefty, I'm a small d Democrat. I believe first and foremost in democracy. It even, believe it or not, supersedes all of my political and economic goals, as I've very roughly stated. I wouldn't want any of that to be true. My utopia, my dream agenda, if the only way I could get it was through anti-democratic means or through some sort of authoritarianism, then I don't want it. My small d democracy supersedes my capital L leftism. Okay? Now, the stakes are very high. They couldn't be higher. Because small d democracy is in peril right now. And the planet itself and our continuing life on the planet is literally in peril. It's my opinion, and this is my economic, political opinion. I don't state this as fact. We're in peril. That's a fact, okay? All right, that's the fact part. In my considered opinion, the only way to avoid the peril of climate crisis is to turn a 180, to shift entirely, and to enact my lefty agenda. Well, the lefty agenda, the one I ascribe to. And without small d democracy, nothing happens. We lose the will of the people. We lose the ability to self-govern. We only exacerbate every current problem, the most pressing being the huge gap, the wealth gap, the power gap. And of course, it all results in the most existential crisis of all, climate crisis. So here's my proposal for today. It's been on my mind. And that is that we need a coalition. I, as a lefty, am very happy to join in a coalition with independents of all stripes. So it's a coalition of lefties and independents, and those we're going to fight corporate Democrats and Republicans on the other side. So this coalition I'm proposing, it is a big tent, yes, and there's plenty of room for political fighting, sure. But basic agreements, we have to have some basic agreements, those who would like to enter this coalition. And some of those are, they are basic, that's the word. We have to agree climate crisis is a real thing, that it's human caused, and that we have to act urgently. Without that, you can't punch your card into this coalition. Now, I happen to think that's a pretty large amount of people. That's a pretty large amount of the electorate. I don't think that's too high of a bar to require. Climate crisis is real, it's human-caused, and we better get on it. All right? That's it. You don't have to go further than that. You don't have to agree to any specific program at this point of the process. Right now, we're forming a coalition. You got that much? All right. A couple other requirements to punch your ticket. You have to believe in civil rights. And this is just fundamental civil rights, that everybody's equal. Women, men, LGBTQ, black, brown, white, Latinx, whatever. You name the category, everybody has equal rights. There again, I'm not giving you any agenda to get into our party here. Well, I got to be careful with my language. I don't want to call it a party. We want to remain independent, into our independent coalition. How we get there? That's the history of self-governance. A lot of fighting about how we get there, but at least we have shared goals. And our goal is that everybody has equal opportunity and, to the greatest extent possible, equal outcomes. Now that's where you get into fighting. Okay, again, we're going to allow for plenty of fighting within our coalition, but we're not going to fight about facts. We're not going to fight about goals. We're only going to fight about policy, how to achieve those shared goals. As I talk about this, it sounds so middle school civics. This is how America is supposed to work. We're not even close to that right now. So I'm not proposing anything revolutionary. I'm proposing basic middle school civics America. We have shared facts, we have shared goals, and then we debate and we fight about how we get there. Here's something else you have to agree on to be a part of our coalition. This gets you your membership card. If you lose that political fight, you accept the loss. You say, yep, I lost. All right. If Congress passes a law that you don't like, you say, well, I lost that fight, but I'm going to follow the law. And if I have some position in government, now we're talking about office holders, especially in the executive. Here's a little middle school civics for you if you forgot. It's the legislative branch that passes law, passes legislation. It's the executive branch that executes the law. They see that it's upheld. All right? Basic civics here in case you forgot. So whatever your position is, if you want to be part of our coalition, after the big political fight, the vote is taken, you lost. All right. You say, yes. All right, I lost. I'll reintroduce a bill in the next session, and we'll fight again. But in the meantime, that's the law of the land, and I'm going to accept that. And especially if you're in the executive branch, if you're the president, or if you're the head of some agency, you are going to follow that law. And not only follow it, you're going to enforce that law. Whether it be health care, something in civil rights, immigration, whatever it is. You don't get to pick and choose. All right, so you want to be part of this coalition so far? We're checking down the list of what it requires for you to be a part of our coalition. What else? Economic justice. This is very similar to what I mentioned earlier. Basic agreements on civil rights. Economic rights. And it's pretty simple. Yeah, there are going to be people on the more conservative side of our coalition who don't want to, I want everything to be free. All right. I'm the first one to admit, in this coalition, I'm on the left side of the coalition. I want everything to be free. I want all basic human rights, food, clothing, shelter, arts, culture, education, healthcare, all of it, every single bit of it, provided free of charge to everyone. And then they work as they see fit to reach their own potential and to serve the community at large. That's me. That's the lefty side. Now, someone more conservative than me might not like my idea. You know what? They are still very welcome in the coalition I'm proposing. But at the very least, they have to share my goal that every person should have all the basic human rights. In the end, they should have them. How they get them that's where our debate happens. Okay? Now, this was a very low bar to hurdle here. Who wouldn't agree that we share that goal? Because quite literally, there are some people who don't have that goal. Some people are going to starve. Some people are going to just be poor forever. That's just the way the world works. There are winners and losers. And it's not our job to be concerned with the losers. They can pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. All right, that keeps you out of our club. That keeps you out of our coalition. You should at least want the best for everyone. You can holler till you're blue in the face about how we get there, and you can have conservative ideas about how we get there, but you have to at least want it. And there are plenty of people right now. They'll tell you right to your face, I don't care. Yeah, economic injustice, it just is what it is. One other example of the checklist to be in our coalition is voting rights. You have to genuinely believe that every person should be able to vote, and it shouldn't be that tough. And you shouldn't be manipulating election systems to intentionally make it hard for some people to vote. Again, this is a very low bar. If you can't cross that, I don't know. And this is why I'm confident that a coalition of independents could work, and now is the time. I mean, let's get real here. Let's look at Joe Biden for a minute. Joe Biden was not selected. I'm using my words carefully here. He was elected. Yes, he was. He was not selected as the Democratic nominee by voters. He was elected but not selected, meaning all of the other major candidates, and there were a few, there was a handful of legitimate candidates, Bernie heading the list, all of them were more lefty than Joe. And I don't want to go back and rehash the whole primary campaign, but we all saw how it came down. It looked like Bernie had this thing going away, and the establishment just wasn't having it. They just were not having it. And they talked Pete Buttigieg, and they talked Amy Klobuchar, even Elizabeth Warren. They got to him and they said, listen, nope, we cannot let this happen. The old center Clinton Democratic establishment took the bull by the horns and just said, nope, we are in charge. And they usurped the will of the voters. The voters didn't want Joe Biden. He was the most moderate, even conservative candidate among the whole field. So Biden really, in a way, kind of stumbled ass backwards into the presidency. He was just the one acceptable candidate for the establishment. The establishment chose your nominee. And the entire nation now is given this choice. Well, it's only one of two candidates. You don't have any other choices. It's either the Orange Menace or Joe Biden. What's it going to be? Well, of course. Our whole coalition of independents, what else are we going to do? We're given no other choices. So I'm saying now is the time. Now is the time. Also, something you and I have talked about recently and something we've learned. Voters are an odd group. By and large, voters make their decision based on two things. One, their short-term interest and short-term issues, whatever's in the news cycle. We talked a lot about it. We won't go back into it. The whole education issue, trumped up, no pun intended, by the Republicans in Virginia, gubernatorial race, invented, bogus. It's like every other little catastrophe they dream up. Immigrants who bring in disease and crime, the war on Christmas or flag burning, whatever they want to, all of these things they invent, they pull right out of their butts, and they convince voters. And if they can get their timing right, and if they can be on top of the news cycle just as as election day is coming up, well, they can take advantage of that because voters, by and large, we do this. Whatever's in the news cycle while the election is happening, short-term issues. That and the so-called economy, basically, am I feeling good about my money or feeling bad about my money situation? Right now, as the election happens, not looking at any long-term planning. No, it's all about what's happening today. And then the last thing is anger. Pollsters tell us that if you can get voters angry and riled up, it's a great motivation for voting. Explaining dense policy, talking about long-range goals, trying to be happy and upbeat, even though a lot of people still think and have thought over the years that that's the way to go. That was Ronald Reagan's great claim to fame. He was the happy warrior, optimistic, make people feel great about America. Yeah, I think those days are done. Oh, and then one more thing, white supremacy. White supremacists are motivated to vote. Okay, so let's look at these motivations as it relates to the coalition of independents I'm proposing. Well, we're not going to change voters. We're not going to change voting behavior. So our coalition would have to go to them. Candidates who profess themselves to be part of this independent coalition. You got to speak to their voters' short-term needs. You have to address whatever short-term issues are in the news cycle. You don't have to give your whole campaign over to that. If it's bogus, you call it out as bogus. You be a truth teller. If people are voting because they're racists, you don't try to appeal to them. You can try to appeal to them on other issues, but the fact that they're racist is not going to be part of your calculation. No, I'm not going to tailor my message as to not offend your racist sensibilities. No, we're not going to do that. The independents will not do that. But anger is a good thing. I'm not afraid of angry voters. There's a lot to be angry about. Go ahead, listen to them. Share their anger. Show a little anger. We talked about this at length in a previous episode, so I won't get back into it. But yeah, a little righteous anger. There's nothing at all wrong with that. I'm not above it. Be angry. Voters are angry. And one of the main things they're angry about is this feeling, which is very much justified, that they're being left out of the equation. That the elites, whether it's the elites in corporate offices or the elites in government, some people don't differentiate. Some get all upset about elitists in government not really noticing the fact that corporate CEOs are running the show. And then some on the moderate left will shake their fists at the corporate overlords, never quite making the connection that they're running the Democratic Party that you stay aligned with. So here's another reason, maybe the main reason, maybe I buried my lead here. The main reason to have an independent coalition is because those who feel no other choice but to vote Republican or Democrat, they are pretty populist, either left populist or right populist. But what they have in common is they feel screwed by the elites, whether in the halls of Congress or in the halls of corporate America. They're not wrong. They're not wrong. But they're forced to choose one of the two parties. This coalition, I alluded very quickly earlier in the conversation here. I said I didn't want to call it a party. It's not a party. That's the whole point. That's the second lead I've buried. I got to get better at organizing my thoughts here. The first lead I buried is it's anti-corporate. Everybody joining the coalition has to feel angry, or at least resentful, or at least suspicious of elite corporate and high governmental power. All right? Good. I'm fine with that. In fact, let me take a little side note just for a second. As a lefty, the one thing I like about the conservative movement, I like the idea that they're hollering for more local control. I like local control. There's a lot of cases where local control is better. It's just more efficient. It's more democratic. I think there should be high standards, especially when it comes to health and education. Again, the basic human rights of people. There should be high standards set at the federal level. Local entities should not be able to give their kids a piss-poor education and say, well, local rights. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. Where I'm a believer in small government is the implementation. Every local region, city, county, state, they're going to have slightly different needs and slightly different ways of going about it, and I'm fine with a lot of local control in implementation. But that's a sideline. Let me get back to the main issue at hand here. So our coalition is absolutely anti-big power. Let's not say big government or big corporate. This is big power, okay? I feel pretty confident as a lefty that I got plenty of people on the other side of the spectrum who will share my concern with top-down corporate power. Plenty of conservatives that I can join arms with. And then, let's see, where was I? I interrupted myself. Oh yeah, this is not a party. This is not a party. This is a coalition of independents. And I truly believe that if we get organized, loosely organized, again, we're not going to go lockstep on every issue. No, we're going to organize on the basic tenets as I've described and help each other get out there. Run for local office. Run for Congress. At some point, maybe sooner rather than later, somebody got to run for president as an independent. And our coalition will form a movement without forming a party. And it's important that we don't think of ourselves as a party. This is not a third party. No, it's not a third party. I would think, at least my goal, I don't have to make this part of our platform, but my personal goal is to pretty much destroy the Republican and Democratic parties. Over time, that they just sort of atrophy, they just sort of wither away. It's soon apparent that they're not part of the process. They don't do anybody any damn good. They do more harm than good, obviously. We don't need them. Another middle school civics reminder. You know, there are no parties in the Constitution, right? There are no Republicans in the Constitution. There are no Democrats in the Constitution. There's nothing at all in the foundational law of this country that says that if Republicans have a majority in Congress, then all the chairs of the committees are Republicans and the speaker is a Republican. All of that is just sort of the way it's turned out. It's what they've done within this body. And there are laws and customs throughout government, just like this, where the party system has been embedded into American government when it was never there in the first place. We don't need any constitutional amendments to remove it. We just need to remove it. And if we get enough independents in elected office, we don't even have to do that. It'll just die a natural death. How beautiful would that be? When the great majority of office holders are independents, and there's still a political spectrum, there's still right, left, and center, and still people have their political battles. That's fine. I'm not afraid of that. That's the way it should be. But the parties, the structures, the party apparatus will just die. I mean, if it all, and there won't be dancing in the streets because it'll happen over time. It'll happen through attrition. Republicans and Democrats will find they just don't have the power anymore because of the numbers. How beautiful would that be? And to get back to the spectrum for a minute, those in the independent coalition I'm proposing will go into their campaigns as candidates. Voters will go into the voting booth. All of us will go into this agreeing ahead of time that we're going to fight with each other about policy, that we're going to embrace middle school civics, and we're going to debate, and we're going to vote, and then we're going to move on, and we're all going to have some shared values and some shared facts, and one side will lose and one side will win, and we'll go forth from there. It's like players shaking hands before the game, right? That's part of the pregame handshake. We're going to promise each other that we're going to stick to the rules. And the biggest rule of all is we're not going to caucus with the major parties, soon to be minor parties, soon to disappear. We're not going to caucus with the Democrats or the Republicans. We are not going to be a party. We're going to remain independent. Other middle school civics promises. We're going to promise not to lie. We're going to promise to lose with dignity, as I mentioned earlier. If you lose a fight, okay. Again, like the kids in the Little League game, you shake hands. All right, you won that one. We'll see you next Tuesday. We'll have another game. You do the fight like it's designed. You believe in basic science. You believe in basic facts. You believe in democracy. These are not high hurdles to cross. So I'm proposing today a coalition. Would you join this coalition as I've described it? I don't want a two-party system anymore. I don't want a third party. I want a zero-party system with a huge, massive clump of independents dominating Congress. And not to mention every state assembly and every mayor's office and every governor's mansion. Expand this to the whole electorate here. And there's never been a better time. There has never been a better time to do this. Less than 30%, depending on the poll you look at, the numbers. Self-identified Republicans, 25 to 30%, somewhere in there, self-identified Democrats, 25 to 30%, and all the rest independents. And the argument against this, people will say, well, no, they're not really independent. They all wind up voting for a Republican or a Democrat. Well, of course they do, because we're not given any other choices. We're not given any other choices. Yeah, there are little parties at the bottom of the ballot, but we know they don't have a chance. We know they don't have a chance. But if there's a real independent with a real opportunity to win, oh, now is the time. You're telling me that an independent running against the two major parties with a legit chance to win isn't going to draw huge numbers? Absolutely. And to put it on the presidential level, just imagine, just put this in your mind for a second. If an independent, high stature, good name recognition, popular, gets on that debate stage with Joe Biden and the Orange Menace? Are you kidding me? I don't mean to be overconfident, but if the independent candidate, name anybody, right, left, or center, again, just a reminder here, this doesn't have to be a lefty. I am more than willing to join with moderates and conservatives in this coalition if we all agree to the tenets that I've outlined. And if you're joining me late, go back and listen to the beginning of this episode to run that down. I am more than willing to vote for a conservative independent over a kind of center-right, mushy, centrist Democrat. It's just, give it to me. I'll do it. Give me the choice. Give me the option. Just put that in your mind's eye for a moment. An articulate, talented, legit, independent candidate standing between Joe Biden and the Orange Menace on a debate stage. Oh, the numbers. It would be amazing. And there's no establishment to stop this independent, like they stopped Bernie, like the Democratic establishment stopped Bernie. There's no infrastructure. There's no party infrastructure to sabotage that candidate. He or she is up there just on their own merit. And in the great spirit of middle school civics, the voters just get to decide who they like best. I'm telling you, that kind of an independent with that kind of a platform, promising to restore democracy, willing to fight along the spectrum without all the current lying and bullshit, that candidate will soar. Joe Biden and the Orange Menace wouldn't stand a chance. This is not utopian. This is not naive. This is so real. And now is the time. Absolutely, it's the time. So again, if you join me late, go back and listen to the first part of this. I kind of lay out the platform of this coalition. And once again, it's not a party. That's the whole point. We're going for a zero-party system. We're going for a coalition of independents, and within that coalition, then we can have our political fights about how we reach shared goals. I'm so convinced. I've never been more convinced of anything in my life. All right, let's go independent, shall we? Let's do this. Let's make this happen. A coalition of independents. All right. You have your marching orders. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. I love you. I'm Charles Purcell.